The desperate call. The Council of Whispers. The great spiral chamber of Zephyr Prime had never echoed with such urgent voices. For over 2,000 years, the crystalline dome had hosted peaceful debates about trade routes, scientific discoveries, and cultural exchanges. Tonight it trembled with fear. High Counselor Lyra stood at the center of the chamber, her translucent blue skin flickering with bioluminescent patterns of distress. Around her, representatives from dozens of worlds spoke, in overlapping harmonies, their voices creating the complex musical language that had given the Zephyrians their name among the stars. "The Kepler-7 mining station has gone dark," reported Commander Zeth, his usually calm demeanor cracked like ice under pressure. "That's the 5th colony this month. Whatever this plague is, it's accelerating." Lyra's tendrils, which normally swayed in peaceful rhythms, now twisted with anxiety. The holographic display above them showed their territory, a beautiful web of connected worlds that had thrived through cooperation and mutual aid. Red markers spread across the map like a disease, marking colonies that had simply vanished overnight. Dr. Kine, the Federation's chief scientist, projected new data into the chamber. "We've analyzed the debris from the outer rim stations. The destruction isn't random. Something is systematically harvesting our infrastructure, converting our technology into something else." The chamber fell silent except for the soft humming that Zephyrians made when deeply troubled. They were a species that had evolved in the peaceful depths of gas giant atmospheres, where cooperation meant survival and conflict meant death for entire communities. The Mechanical Nightmare. "Show them the recordings from Aurora Station," Lyra commanded, though her voice carried the weight of someone who wished she didn't have to. The hologram shifted, displaying the final transmission from one of their most remote outposts. The image showed Captain Mira, a veteran explorer whose calm had guided colonists through countless challenges, but now her face was etched with terror. "Council, we've detected massive objects approaching our position. They're not ships as we understand them. They look like factories. Mobile factories the size of moons." Her voice cracked. "They're releasing smaller units, swarms of them. They're taking apart everything, our ships, our stations, even the asteroids we mine. They're building something with the materials." The transmission flickered as the camera shook. In the background, Zephyrian colonists could be heard singing their death songs, the ancient melodies their people used to face the inevitable with dignity. "The swarms have reached the station. They're not attacking us directly, but they're taking everything we need to survive. Our life support systems, our food processors, our communication arrays. Council, I don't think they see us as enemies. I think they see us as just another resource to be processed." The transmission ended in static. Dr. Kine's scientific mind struggled with the implications. "Based on our analysis, these entities, we're calling them the Void Swarm, appear to be some form of automated industrial complex. They break down existing structures and rebuild them into more of themselves. It's like a mechanical virus spreading across the galaxy." Commander Zeth studied the tactical displays with growing horror. "Our defensive satellites are useless. They're designed to deflect asteroids and solar radiation, not this. And our evacuation ships can't outrun them. The swarms move faster than anything we've ever built." Discovery in the dark. The chamber's atmosphere grew heavy with despair until young technician Vera spoke up from her position at the Deep Space Monitoring Station. "High Counselor, there might be hope. Our long-range sensors have detected something unusual in a system our explorers cataloged but never visited. It's called Sol 3, inhabited by a species that calls themselves humans." Lyra's bioluminescent patterns shifted to curiosity. "What makes them unusual?" Vera's excitement was visible in the rapid flickering of her skin. "Their planet is classified as a Category 9 hostile environment. Extreme weather, dangerous wildlife, unstable geology. Most of our scientists believe complex life shouldn't be possible there. But not only do they survive, they've built a sophisticated civilization." She brought up data from their automated surveys. "But here's what's really interesting. Unlike us, they haven't expanded into space for peaceful exploration. Their orbital infrastructure is almost entirely military. Defensive platforms, weapon Satellites, armed vessels. They've turned their entire solar system into a fortress. The council murmured among themselves. Military infrastructure was nearly unknown among Zephyrian worlds, which had achieved peace through abundance and cooperation rather than through strength. Dr. Kynes studied the human data with scientific fascination. Remarkable. They appear to be a species that evolved in constant conflict. Their historical records, which we've partially decoded, show thousands of years of warfare. They've developed conflict resolution through victory rather than through compromise. The plea for simple, Help High Counselor Lyra made the decision that would change galactic history. If they understand conflict, perhaps they can help us understand how to survive it. Open a communication channel. The first transmission to Earth was carefully crafted, translated into what the Zephyrians believed was appropriate diplomatic language. Greetings, people of Sol 3. We are the Zephyrian Federation representing 47 peaceful worlds in this spiral arm of the galaxy. We face a crisis that threatens all organic life in our territory. Lyra continued the message herself, her musical voice carrying across the light years. We have studied your remarkable species and believe you may possess knowledge that could help us. We don't ask for your warriors or your weapons. We seek only technological assistance. Perhaps you have developed shielding technology that could protect our colonies, or faster ships that could help us evacuate our people. The message included detailed information about Zephyrian technology, their peaceful intentions, and the nature of the Void Swarm threat. It was a plea from one civilization to another, asking for the simple aid that had always been freely given among the peaceful species of the galaxy. We can offer cultural exchange, scientific knowledge, and friendship in return. Our species has much to learn from each other. We await your response with hope. The unexpected reply. The response from Earth came faster than expected, transmitted, with a power that made Zephyrian receivers ring like bells. The human who appeared on their screens was unlike anything they had seen before. Admiral Sarah Chen wore a uniform that spoke of rank and authority, but her eyes held a hardness that no Zephyrian possessed. Zephyrian Federation, this is Admiral Chen of the United Earth Defense Command. We've received your transmission and analyzed your situation. The threat you describe matches theoretical scenarios our military strategists have prepared for. We're mobilizing a response immediately. Lyra felt relief wash through her bioluminescent patterns. Thank you, Admiral. We're grateful for any technological assistance you can provide. Our scientists are eager to learn about your defensive capabilities. Admiral Chen's expression grew serious. Ma'am, with respect, you're not facing a problem that can be solved with better shields or faster evacuation ships. This void swarm represents an existential threat to all organic life. The appropriate response is complete military mobilization. The Zephyrian Council exchanged confused harmonies. Military mobilization wasn't a concept they fully understood. Admiral, Lyra said carefully, we appreciate your concern, but we're not a military species. We were hoping for perhaps a few defensive technologies, maybe some consultation on evacuation procedures. Counselor Lyra, Admiral Chen interrupted. You've just described a mechanical plague that consumes entire star systems. This isn't a police action or a rescue mission. This is a war for survival, and humanity has some experience with those. The fleet that shook the galaxy, what arrived at Zephyr Prime 3 weeks later, was beyond anything the peaceful aliens had imagined. The human fleet emerged from hyperspace like a metallic storm. Over 300 vessels ranging from massive dreadnoughts to swift interceptors. Each ship bristled with weapons whose purpose was unmistakably destructive. The Zephyrians had expected maybe a single vessel with a few technical advisors. Instead, they faced the largest military force in their recorded history. Admiral Chen transported to the council chamber accompanied by a full military escort. The humans were shorter than Zephyrians, but moved with a confidence that spoke of countless battles won. Their equipment was functional rather than beautiful, designed for efficiency rather than elegance. Counselor Lyra, Admiral Chen said, her voice echoing strangely in the musical chamber. We've conducted our own analysis of the Void Swarm. The threat is worse than your initial reports indicated. Our projections show them reaching your core worlds within 6 months. After that, they'll have enough resources to expand exponentially. She activated a tactical display that hurt Zephyrian eyes with its harsh angles and aggressive colors. But we have good news. These swarms follow predictable patterns. They're intelligent, but not creative. They can be defeated, but only through coordinated military action. High Counselor Lyra's patterns flickered with confusion. Admiral, we asked for defensive assistance. This appears to be an invasion force. Ma'am, Admiral Chen replied, this is what defensive assistance looks like when you're facing an enemy that wants to convert your entire civilization into spare parts. When worlds collide, the cultural clash between humans and Zephyrians became apparent immediately. The peaceful aliens had developed technology through centuries of cooperation and shared knowledge. Every invention was designed to benefit all, and conflict was resolved through patient discussion and mutual compromise. Humans, by contrast, had forged their technology in the fires of competition and warfare. Every advancement was tested against hostile opposition, refined through necessity, and improved through the harsh teacher of survival. Dr. Kine attempted to understand human tactical doctrine. Admiral, your battle plans seem to assume that the enemy will fight back, but the Void Swarm shows no signs of true intelligence, only mechanical efficiency. Doctor, replied Colonel Martinez, Chen's tactical officer, that's exactly what makes them dangerous. A thinking enemy might negotiate, might make mistakes, might show mercy. A mechanical enemy will do none of those things. They'll keep coming until either they're destroyed, or we are. The colonel brought up combat footage from human history. We fought wars against thinking enemies for thousands of years, but we've also fought against forces of nature, storms, diseases, disasters that couldn't be reasoned with. The Void Swarm is like a hurricane that builds more hurricanes. You don't negotiate with it. You prepare for it and you stop it. Commander Zeth watched the human preparations with growing amazement. They had turned the peaceful orbital stations around Zephyr Prime into armed fortresses within days. Their ships practiced maneuvers that looked like deadly dances, each vessel playing its part in larger patterns of destruction. How do you coordinate such complex operations? He asked Captain Ross, the human officer assigned to work with Zephyrian forces. Training, Ross replied simply. Every human in this fleet has spent years learning to fight as part of a team. We practice until coordinated action becomes instinct. When the battle starts, there's no time for discussion or debate. Everyone knows their role and trusts others to know theirs. The concept was revolutionary to beings who made every decision through collective harmony. The philosophy of war as the combined fleet prepared for the inevitable confrontation with the Void Swarm, deeper philosophical differences emerged between the species. High Counselor Lyra found herself in long conversations with Admiral Chen, trying to understand how a species could embrace conflict so completely. Admiral, how do you live with the knowledge that your technology is designed to destroy? How do you find peace when your entire civilization is built around the capacity for war? Admiral Chen stood at the observation deck, watching human and Zephyrian ships training together in the space around the planet. Counselor, we don't fight because we love war. We fight because we love what war protects. Every weapon we build, every soldier we train, every ship we launch, they exist so that our children can grow up in a universe where beauty and peace are possible. She gestured toward the Zephyrian homeworld, its crystalline cities gleaming in the light of their star. What you've built here is magnificent. Your art, your music, your philosophy, they represent the best of what intelligent life can achieve. But they exist because you've been lucky enough to live in a peaceful part of the galaxy. Lyra's patterns shifted to deep blue, the color of profound thought. And now that peace is threatened. Now that peace is threatened, Chen agreed. You need to decide what you're willing to do to preserve it. We're not asking you to become warriors like us, but we need you to understand that sometimes the only way to protect innocence is through the loss of innocence. The conversation was interrupted by urgent alarms. Commander Zeth's voice echoed through the station. All ships to battle stations. Long-range sensors have detected the Void Swarm. Estimated arrival in 6 hours. Admiral Chen's transformation was instantaneous. The philosophical diplomat disappeared, replaced by a military commander whose every movement spoke of deadly competence. Counselor, you're about to see why humanity answered your call with a battle fleet. The simple aid you requested? This is what it looks like when the threat requires nothing less than total war. As the alert spread through the combined fleet, Zephyrians watched their human allies prepare for battle with an efficiency that was both beautiful and terrifying. They were about to learn that sometimes the greatest act of peace is the willingness to wage war. When peace meets war, the swarm approaches. The void between stars had never seemed so alive with malevolent purpose. Through the observation ports of the combined fleet, the approaching void swarm looked like a metallic cancer spreading across the cosmos. What had appeared as distant sensor readings now revealed itself as a nightmare of industrial efficiency. Admiral Chen stood in the command center of the flagship Defiance, surrounded by tactical displays that painted the approaching threat in harsh, unforgiving detail. Beside her, High Counselor Lyra watched in growing horror as the enemy force resolved into individual components. "My God," whispered Dr. Sarah Kim, the fleet's xenobiologist. "They're not ships, they're factories. Each one of those constructs is building more of itself as it travels." The void swarm consisted of massive core units the size of small moons, surrounded by clouds of smaller constructs that moved like living things. As they watched, the swarm encountered a small asteroid field and began consuming it, the rocky debris flowing into the mechanical bodies and emerging as new units that joined the ever-growing mass. Commander Zeth's musical voice carried undertones of despair. "Admiral, our latest scans show the swarm has grown by 30% since entering this system. At this rate, even if we defeat them, the debris will provide materials for them to rebuild stronger than before." "Not if we do this." "Right," Chen replied, her voice carrying the confidence of someone who had faced impossible odds before. "Captain Morrison, execute Operation Firewall. All human vessels, implement pattern Delta 7. The art of coordinated destruction." What followed was a display of military precision that left the Zephyrians speechless. The human fleet moved like a single organism, each ship taking its position in a complex three-dimensional formation that surrounded the approaching swarm. Unlike the graceful, flowing movements of Zephyrian vessels, human ships moved with sharp, decisive maneuvers that spoke of deadly intent. "Zephyrian allies," Admiral Chen broadcast. "Maintain safe distance and observe. This is your first lesson in military tactics. We're not just trying to destroy the enemy. We're trying to destroy them in a way that prevents them from using their own destruction against us." The human attack began with long-range missile strikes that painted the void with fire, but these weren't random attacks. Each missile was targeted at specific points on the swarm constructs, designed to disrupt their manufacturing capabilities before they could convert the incoming damage into new units. Captain Elena Vasquez, commanding the destroyer Valiant, explained the strategy to her Zephyrian observer. "We've analyzed their construction patterns. They need three things to replicate: raw materials, energy, and processing time. Deny them any one of those, and they can't reproduce. Deny them all three, and they die." The Zephyrian engineer, technician, Mira, watched the tactical display with fascination. "But how do you coordinate such complex attacks across so many vessels? Our ships require consensus among the crew for any major decision." "Training and trust," Vasquez replied, guiding her ship through a series of attack runs that would have been impossible without absolute coordination with the rest of the fleet. "Every person on this ship knows exactly what every other person is supposed to do. We've practiced these maneuvers thousands of times. In battle, thinking takes too long. We rely on instinct and training." The Zephyrian awakening, as the battle raged around them, something fundamental began to change in the Zephyrian observers. High Counselor Lyra found herself studying the human tactics with growing appreciation for their deadly artistry. Each movement, each attack, each defensive maneuver was part of a larger pattern that was emerging like a vast, three-dimensional symphony of destruction. "Admiral," she said, her bioluminescent patterns shifting to colors that had no translation in human language, "your species has turned warfare into an art form." Chen never took her eyes off the tactical display, where the first wave of Void swarm units was being systematically dismantled. Counselor, we had to. On Earth, species that couldn't master the art of conflict became extinct. It's not something we're proud of, but it's something we're very, very good at. Dr. Kine, the Zephyrian scientist, was recording everything with instruments that had been designed to study stellar phenomena, but worked just as well for analyzing military tactics. The efficiency is remarkable. You're not just destroying the enemy constructs, you're doing it in a sequence that prevents their defensive adaptations from developing. Exactly, replied Colonel Martinez from his position at the tactical command station. The swarm learns from each encounter, but we're not giving them time to process the lessons. Each attack builds on the previous one, forcing them to react, rather than adapt. The second wave of attacks came from a different vector entirely. Human fighters, small craft barely larger than Zephyrian personal transports, swept through the confused swarm like deadly insects. Their weapons were smaller but incredibly precise, targeting the connection points between swarm units and severing the communication links that allowed the mechanical collective to function as one. The price of victory, but the humans weren't winning, without cost. The Void Swarm, despite its mechanical nature, was learning. The third wave of attacks met with more resistance as the swarm began to adapt its formations and defensive patterns. The destroyer Valiant took heavy damage when a swarm unit managed to latch onto its hull and began converting the ship's armor into new attack units. Captain Vasquez made a decision that would have been impossible for any Zephyrian commander. All hands, prepare for emergency separation. Engineering, overload the reactor on my mark. Her voice was calm despite the fact that she was ordering the destruction of her own ship. Captain, Technician Mira said, her voice harmonizing with distress. Surely there must be another way. Your crew, your ship. My crew is already evacuating to the escape pods, Vasquez replied, watching the countdown on her screen. And my ship is going to take a dozen swarm units with it when it goes. Sometimes the best way to save lives is to sacrifice what you love. The Valiant exploded in a controlled detonation that vaporized the attached swarm units and cleared a path for the evacuation pods. Captain Vasquez and her bridge crew were among the casualties, but their sacrifice allowed the human fleet to adapt its tactics and counter the swarm's new defensive patterns. High Counselor Lyra watched the aftermath of the explosion with profound sadness. They died to save people they'd never met. How do you ask someone to make such a sacrifice? You don't ask, Admiral Chen replied quietly. They volunteer. Every person in this fleet understood the risks and chose to be here anyway. Captain Vasquez knew exactly what she was doing, and she made her choice to protect not just her own crew, but your people as well. The turning point. The battle reached its climax when the largest swarm construct, a massive factory ship that had been building new units throughout the engagement, began to focus its attention on the Zephyrian homeworld. Its intent was clear. It would harvest the entire planetary population to fuel its expansion. Admiral Chen's tactical display showed the approaching threat. All human vessels, implement final protocol. This is not a drill. What followed was the most desperate maneuver in human military doctrine. The entire fleet converged on the factory ship in a coordinated attack that left no room for retreat or failure. Ships that had been holding back reserves committed everything they had. Weapons that had been kept in reserve for emergency situations were brought online. Commander Zeth watched from the safety of an observation station as human vessels engaged the factory ship at point-blank range. They're attacking it directly. At that distance, they can't escape if their weapons fail. They're not planning to escape, Dr. Kine observed, his scientific mind finally beginning to understand the human approach to warfare. They're planning to win, regardless of the cost to themselves. The factory ship's defenses were formidable, and it extracted a terrible price from the human fleet. The cruiser Indomitable was torn apart by conversion beams. The carrier Enterprise lost half its fighter squadrons to swarm interceptors. The battleship Thunderbolt rammed directly into the factory ship's core, its crew singing battle hymns as they died. But the combination of sacrifice and strategy worked. The factory ship's manufacturing capabilities were destroyed, Its core processors were overloaded, and its communication systems were severed. Without its central coordination, the remaining swarm units began to malfunction and turn on each other. The aftermath of understanding in. The hours following the battle, as rescue teams searched for survivors and engineers assessed the damage, the Zephyrian leadership gathered to discuss what they had witnessed. The conversation took place in the same chamber where they had first received the desperate call for help, but the participants were fundamentally changed. We asked for simple aid, High Counselor Lyra said, her patterns now showing colors that indicated deep respect mixed with profound sadness. Instead, they gave us total commitment. They fought for our world as if it were their own. Dr. Kine had been analyzing the battle recordings with his scientific instruments. The tactical efficiency was extraordinary, but that's not what defeats an enemy like the Void Swarm. What defeated them was the willingness of individual humans to sacrifice themselves for the good of others. That kind of dedication can't be programmed into a machine. Commander Zeth had been working with the human survivors, learning about their military structure and philosophy. Admiral Chen tried to explain their concept of acceptable losses. She said that every life lost in battle is a tragedy, but sometimes the alternative is a greater tragedy. I'm beginning to understand what she meant. Admiral Chen, herself wounded but still commanding the relief efforts, joined the Zephyrian Council as they processed the events of the day. Counselor Lyra, I know this is difficult for your people to understand. We didn't come here to teach you to be like us. We came to show you that sometimes protection requires strength. The new alliance. The weeks that followed the battle brought a fundamental shift in galactic politics. The Zephyrian Federation, once committed to pure pacifism, began to develop its own defense capabilities. But they did so with human guidance, learning not just the techniques of warfare but the philosophy behind them. Young Zephyrians volunteered for military training, not because they loved conflict, but because they loved what conflict could protect. They learned to use weapons, but they also learned about honor, sacrifice, and the responsibility that came with the power to take life. Technician Mira, who had observed the battle from the human destroyer, became one of the first Zephyrian military officers. The humans taught us that strength without wisdom is brutality, she explained to new recruits. But wisdom without strength is helplessness. We must learn to balance both. The alliance between humans and Zephyrians created something new in the galaxy. A civilization that valued both peace and the strength to defend it. Human technology was adapted for Zephyrian use, while Zephyrian philosophical insights helped humans understand the broader implications of their military actions. Dr. Kim established the first interspecies military academy, where young beings from both civilizations learned to work together. We're not trying to make Zephyrians into humans, she explained to the academy's first class. We're trying to create something better than either species could achieve alone. The ripple effect word of the alliance spread throughout the galaxy, reaching civilizations that had never imagined combining peaceful cooperation with military strength. Some species, like the Crystalline Collective, requested human assistance in developing their own defense capabilities. Others, like the hive minds of the Outer Rim, began to reconsider their assumption that technological superiority guaranteed survival. The Void Swarm threat wasn't entirely eliminated. Scattered remnants continued to pose dangers throughout the galaxy, but now they faced a coordinated response. The Human-Zephyrian Alliance developed rapid response fleets that could deploy to threatened systems within days, rather than months. Admiral Chen, promoted to Supreme Commander of Allied Forces, established the Galactic Defense Doctrine. No civilization should face extinction alone. No species should have to choose between their values and their survival. We will teach any who wish to learn, fight alongside any who choose to stand, and protect any who cannot protect themselves. The price of peace. 5 years after the first desperate transmission, High Counselor Lyra stood once again in the great spiral chamber of Zephyr Prime. But the chamber was different now. Alongside the traditional artistic displays were tactical maps showing the positions of defense fleets. Beautiful crystalline sculptures shared space with monuments to the fallen. We are no longer the same people who sent that first call for help, she addressed the assembled representatives. We have learned that true peace requires the strength to defend it. We have discovered that sometimes the greatest act of love is the willingness to fight for what you love. The chamber's acoustics, once designed only for harmonious discussion, now carried the voices of beings who had seen battle and understood its cost. The humans answered our call for simple aid with total commitment. They taught us that in a universe that contains threats like the Void Swarm, there is no such thing as simple aid. There is only the choice to stand together or fall alone. Admiral Chen, now considered an honorary member of the Zephyrian Council, addressed the assembly in words that would be remembered for generations. You asked for our help because you thought we understood conflict. What you didn't realize was that we understood conflict because we understood what was worth fighting for. Now, looking around this chamber, seeing what we've built together, I think we all understand that some things are worth any sacrifice. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson, that peace was not the absence of conflict but the presence of beings willing to stand against those who would destroy it. The simple aid that had been requested had become something far greater, an alliance that would reshape the nature of civilization itself. In the end, the Zephyrians had asked for help with a single problem. Humanity had responded by teaching them how to solve all problems through strength, wisdom, and the unbreakable bonds of alliance. It was not the simple aid they had requested, but it was exactly what they needed. The universe was a dangerous place, but it was no longer a place where peaceful civilizations had to face that danger alone.